Imagine receiving a text message that not only destroys your career, but also triggers a federal investigation under the Espionage Act. It sounds like the plot of a spy thriller, but for me, that was just Tuesday night. One minute, I was standing on a Manhattan rooftop, surrounded by the financial elite, celebrating my hard-earned VP promotion at 30 years old. I was independent, successful, and finally proving to the world and to my family who flaked on my birthday that I didn't need anyone. I was holding a $500 glass of vintage Cabernet, watching the glittering grid of New York City, and thinking I had finally won. The next minute, the glass was trembling in my hand as four men in functional, off-the-rack suits stepped out of the elevator. They weren't dressed for a party, they were dressed to blend in while screaming "federal agent" to anyone paying attention. They moved with military precision, cutting off every possible escape route, boxing me in against the glass railing. The lead agent, tall, gray-haired, with cold, analytical eyes, flashed a badge. The words Federal Bureau of Investigation burned themselves into my memory. "Natasha Hill," he stated, his voice flat, analytical, missing nothing. "You're being detained under the Espionage Act. We detected a physical breach at your Hill industrial facility. Secure communications suggest you sold access code protocols to a third party." The world tilted. The air went out of the room. Espionage? I run a quiet, perfectly legal side business flipping industrial real estate and managing server farms. Everything is licensed, compartmentalized, and by the book. I hadn't sold anything. My voice sounded distant, coming from underwater as I tried to deny the accusation. But Agent Miller, reading the fear in my eyes and the horror on my colleagues' faces, simply told me I'd have an opportunity to explain later. My entire career, months of grueling work, years of sacrifices, was dying in real time, suffocating under the weight of an unproven accusation and immense liability concerns. They escorted me away from my party, away from my triumphant moment, and into a service elevator. We descended 43 floors in a silence broken only by the pneumatic hiss of the elevator and the frantic pounding hammer of my own pulse. I wasn't under arrest, but I was absolutely not free. My controlled, perfect life was shattered by a single, terrifying word: espionage. The service elevator opened into a grimy New York alleyway, smelling of garbage and cold rain. Parked between two dumpsters was a vehicle that looked like something out of a futuristic war film. A black armored truck mated with a mobile command center. The acronym SCIF, Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, flashed through my mind from some distant defense contract briefing. This was a portable, sealed room designed to prevent any signal from getting in or out. This wasn't a casual police inquiry. This was serious. As the bank vault-like door sealed shut behind me, the interior was revealed to be cramped, clinical, and packed with monitors and communications gear. Everything was gray or black. Everything was cold. I sat where Miller told me to sit, my mind racing to process the terrifying reality of my situation. Another agent began setting up recording equipment. Then Miller slid a tablet across the metal table bolted to the floor, and the surveillance feeds on the screen instantly confirmed my worst fears. I recognized the building with a sick jolt of understanding. It was the gray box, my warehouse. Only it wasn't just a warehouse. Miller's voice, flat and procedural, cut through the noise of my racing thoughts. He explained that at 2020 Eastern Standard Time, they detected an unauthorized physical breach at the facility registered to my company, Hill Industrial Holdings. This facility, he stressed, housed server infrastructure for multiple Department of Defense subcontractors. The breach was critical enough to trigger a silent alarm connected directly to the FBI Cyber Division. He slid the tablet closer, and the live video showed two figures in hoodies using bolt cutters on a heavy-duty padlock. The timestamp confirmed it, 20:40 and 15 seconds EST. It was happening right now. The intrusion was ongoing, and the breach was deep. The images were stark, undeniable proof that someone was actively trying to break into a high-security federal asset that was registered in my name. The FBI's initial conclusion was logical. They intercepted communications suggesting I had facilitated this breach. They believed I was the inside man, the one who sold the protocols. Agent Miller looked me in the eye and asked, in a tone that allowed for no negotiation, "Who did you sell access to?" My denial felt weak, but it was honest. I didn't sell access to anyone. I would never. As the silence stretched, heavy and accusatory, my hand instinctively went to my jacket pocket. My phone vibrated. The agent who patted me down must have missed it, or perhaps they had left it there deliberately, hoping for a sign of communication with my supposed co-conspirators. I had a horrifying premonition that whatever was on that phone would change everything, but not in the way the FBI expected. "Check it," Miller commanded, his gaze fixed on me. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone. The screen displayed a text message from my younger sister, Madison. The message was sent just moments after the initial silent alarm was triggered at the facility, 20:20 p.m. EST. I opened it, and the words that flooded the small, cold screen were so absurd, so wrong, and so catastrophically devastating that I had to read them 3 times for them to make any sense at all. Madison had written, "Money received. Just sold your rusty old storage unit to Quick Flip. $350,000 cash wired. They wanted it tonight. Don't worry, I put the money in the family trust for my startup. You're welcome." For a long, paralyzing moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, and couldn't process the sheer scale of the disaster this text represented. I hadn't sold secret states. I hadn't orchestrated a high-level corporate fraud. No, the truth was far more tragically idiotic. My sister, in a breathtaking act of entitled incompetence, had just sold a $14 million federal security asset to a predatory real estate wholesaler for the price of a used luxury car. I looked up at Agent Miller, who had taken the phone to read the text himself. I could feel a seismic shifting happening in my chest, a cold, sharp feeling replacing the panic. I was no longer the primary suspect. I was the victim of an elaborate yet utterly clueless crime. "I didn't sell state secrets," I said, my voice slow, each word deliberately precise as a surgical cut. "My idiot sister just sold the building to a predatory whale sailor for the price of a used Ferrari." Miller's expression didn't change, but his posture did. The tension in the room rotated on its axis. He realized the Espionage Act accusation was baseless, but the security asset, the most critical part of this entire situation, was still severely compromised. I had gone from potential traitor to a woman whose own family had inadvertently made her the owner of a major federal security nightmare. This changed everything for me, but for Madison, the consequences were only just beginning to unfold. The focus shifted from why I sold the asset to how a security asset could be sold without the owner's knowledge. The next 5 minutes inside that skiff felt like an hour as Miller started making coordinating calls, clearly updating his superiors on the extraordinary, bizarre turn of events. I took a deep breath. I needed to explain the asset. I needed to tell him everything. "Explain the asset," Miller repeated, and I realized I had to lay out the full truth of the gray box. This was like explaining a magic trick. The result is impressive, but the method is surprisingly mundane once you understand it. 6 years ago, I had purchased the property for $800,000. Its location was key. Deep in an industrial zone, 40 minutes outside the city, completely devoid of civilian neighbors, foot traffic, or any reason for a civilian to drive by. To Madison, who had visited exactly once and called it a dump, it looked exactly like an abandoned warehouse. Concrete walls, no windows, no signage, surrounded by a simple chain-link fence. But that was the genius of the design. I explained it was a secure server facility, a gray box, built to house off-site backup infrastructure for defense contractors. The no-windows design wasn't cheap, it was a deliberate choice, because windows are a massive security liability, allowing for visual surveillance or potential sniper angles. The lack of signage ensured operational security. Armed guards attract attention, but an unmarked, forgotten building in an industrial park does not. The passive security Madison saw was a deliberate decoy. The true security was deep within the layers of compliance, the silent alarms, and the federal contracts. Then there was Quick Flip. I pulled up my email and found the cold outreach message I'd flagged the previous week. Quick Flip Ventures, I explained, was a real estate wholesaling company specializing in distressed properties, foreclosures, and abandoned buildings. They used satellite imagery to scout for properties. Miller asked what they saw in those satellite photos. Industrial cooling towers, high-grade HVAC systems, the kind of infrastructure needed to run a massive, high-powered server farm. They didn't see a federal asset. They think it's a private crypto mining facility. I stated, the realization dawning in Miller's eyes. They believed it was millions of dollars in equipment, abandoned or forgotten, waiting to be salvaged. Their plan was to strip the cooling systems and steal the servers before I could file a police report. What they didn't realize is that the simple act of cutting that perimeter lock didn't trigger a local police siren, it triggered a federal counterintelligence monitoring alarm. Miller tapped on his tablet. We have a tactical team en route. They'll be on site in approximately 8 minutes. Quick Flip was about to have a very, very bad night.
While the tactical team was on its way to my facility, a much darker realization settled over me. Madison's crime was not just a simple mistake. It was a felony. Wire fraud. Identity theft. To execute a sale, Miller confirmed, she would have needed to forge corporate documents, sign contracts in my name, and wire transfer the proceeds. That was multiple federal crimes. I should have felt fear for my sister, guilt or familial obligation. Instead, I felt only a cold, distant curiosity about what would happen next. I was finally out of emotional capacity for a family that had consistently failed to show up for me. I requested to check my voicemail, a knot tightening in my stomach. Miller nodded, allowing it. I navigated to my messages and found one from my mother, sent a half hour before the sale closed. It was marked as a voice note sent to the family group chat. I almost didn't listen to it. Some deep instinct warned me that this recording would change something fundamental. I pressed play, and Mom's voice, slightly muffled but perfectly clear, filled the cramped command vehicle. She didn't realize she was recording. She was talking to my dad in the background. I blocked Natasha so she can't whine about this. Just sell the warehouse, Madison. She's hoarding that junk while you suffer. Consider it restitution for us raising such a selfish daughter. The recording continued, speaking of how I'd always been difficult, how I never needed them the way Madison did, and how it was only fair that the golden child finally got something for once. Then it cut off. I sat there, perfectly still. Something inside me, a motor that had been running my entire life, that desperate, aching need for my parents' approval, the silent voice wondering if I could just be better, work harder, and achieve more until they finally saw me, that motor simply ceased. The noise of its running was gone. They hadn't just stolen from me. They felt entitled to rob me. They called it restitution for raising me. When Miller's voice, now sounding distant and concerned, prompted me, I looked up. My expression was settling into something new, something dangerously calm. My mother just admitted to conspiracy to commit wire fraud on a recorded line, I stated. She blocked my number so I couldn't interfere, then encouraged Madison to sell property she knew wasn't hers. Miller and the other agents exchanged quick glances. This was no longer just about securing an asset, it was a full-blown criminal investigation against my entire family, and I was their star witness. The younger agent made a note. To secure my name and the facility, they needed Madison's confession on record. I understood exactly what Agent Miller was asking me to do. I needed to call Madison and get her to incriminate herself, not just for the identity theft, but for the conspiracy with my parents, all while the FBI listened and recorded. The old Natasha, the one who existed before hearing the word restitution, would have agonized over this betrayal, paralyzed by familial obligation. But that Natasha was gone, killed by the sound of my mother's voice. Restitution for raising such a selfish daughter? The only thing I needed now was justice, clean and complete. I'll need my attorney on standby, I said calmly. Ethan Vance. He specializes in corporate fraud cases. Miller nodded, and they set about conferencing him in. While they handled the logistics, I pulled up my digital LLC records, incorporation documents, tax filings, and property deeds, all stored in encrypted cloud storage. Everything proved I was the sole owner of Hill Industrial Holdings. Everything proved Madison had zero authority to sell anything. Ethan answered on the second ring, and I gave him the brutally short version. FBI detention, sister sold federal security asset, need to trap her on recording. To his credit, he didn't waste time with questions, only giving 2 quick instructions. I'll monitor the call, don't admit to anything, let them talk. Miller connected my phone to the FBI's forensic recording system. Every word of the upcoming conversation would be documented, time-stamped, and legally admissible. This was going to be more than a simple phone call. It was a federal deposition in disguise. "Make the call," Miller instructed. I pulled up Madison's contact and switched to FaceTime. My finger hovered over the call button for just a moment. This was the true point of no return. Once I made this call, I wasn't just cooperating with the FBI. I was actively participating in my family's destruction. I thought about the voicemail one last time, allowing the pain to harden into resolve. I pressed the button. The call connected after 3 rings, bridging the vast distance between two fundamentally different worlds. On my end, I was in a dark, cramped, sterile FBI mobile command unit, parked in a New York alley, the air smelling of cold metal and electronics. The only light came from the surveillance monitors, casting everything in shades of blue and gray. On the other end, Madison was in a luxury log cabin in Aspen, 2 hours behind New York. Madison's screen filled with warmth and golden light from a crackling stone fireplace. She was wearing a cashmere sweater that likely cost more than my first car, and her skin glowed with the kind of relaxation that comes from having 0 consequences in life. She was celebrating. "Natasha," she chirped, a wide, slightly tipsy grin on her face. "Did you get my text? Pretty amazing, right? I basically just made you $350,000? Usually, when my family dismissed me or took credit for my work, I would get defensive, sputter, or try to over-explain myself. Sometimes I'd even cry. But tonight, I was ice. "Madison," I asked, my voice level, almost curious, "did you physically go to the property before you sold it?" She laughed, taking a casual sip of champagne. "Why would I? I saw it 6 years ago when you bought it. Total dump, honestly. I'm impressed QuickFlip even wanted it." Then she launched into a proud, detailed confession of her crime. "I did everything online, found the old LLC paperwork in mom and dad's safe, created a corporate resolution authorizing the sale, signed your name, and boom, easiest $350K ever." In the skiff, Agent Miller's pen moved across his notepad, marking down every single word. Document forgery, identity theft, fraud, all admitted to freely on a federally recorded line. "You faked a corporate resolution?" I asked, my tone still neutral, just seeking clear, recordable detail. "It wasn't hard," she bragged, the pride in her voice sickening. "I used DocuSign and a template I found online. QuickFlip never even questioned it. They were so excited to get the property they wired the money within minutes." Wire fraud, computer fraud, every word she uttered was another nail in her own coffin. I should have probably stopped her, warned her, or told her to get a lawyer, but the phrase restitution for raising such a selfish daughter echoed in my mind. "Madison," I said quietly, a profound shift occurring in my tone, "that property isn't a dump. It's a black site. It hosts servers for Department of Defense contractors. There are no windows to prevent sniper attacks. There's no signage to prevent espionage." Her smile instantly faltered. "What are you talking about? I saw the satellite images. It's just industrial cooling units." "And you saw what QuickFlip wanted you to see. They identified it as a potential crypto mining farm and planned to loot the equipment before I noticed. They cut the perimeter lock approximately 30 minutes ago." Uncertainty was now mixing with her champagne-fueled euphoria. The call was descending into chaos. Behind Madison, Dad appeared in the frame, his face flushed with wine in the warmth of the fireplace. "Stop lying, Natasha. You're just jealous because Madison actually did something productive for once." He slurred, oblivious to the fact that he was confessing to conspiracy on a recorded line. "We checked the satellite view. It's a server farm. Madison sold it for scrap value. Honestly, you should be thanking her for finally monetizing that waste of money." I pressed the advantage. "Did Mom tell you?" "She sent a voicemail to the family group chat," I asked, watching Dad's face darken as he processed the implications of Mom's unguarded confession. "The one where she said selling my property was restitution for raising me?" Before he could formulate a denial, Mom squeezed into the frame, her voice dripping with syrupy justification. "Natasha, honey, I know you're upset, but you have to understand, Madison needed this. You've always been so independent and we were helping both of you." "By stealing from me?" I challenged. It's not stealing when it's family, it's sharing, something you've never understood. And Mom added the final devastating piece of evidence. And now, we already spent some of the money, sweetie. We put $50,000 down in a luxury RV. It's non-refundable. If you ruin this deal, you'd be stealing from our retirement. Is that really what you want? You spent stolen money on an RV deposit, I calmly summarized. That's receiving stolen property under federal law. Depending on how the prosecutor wants to charge it, it could also be money laundering under the RICO statutes. At that moment, Ethan's voice, now crisp and professional, cut through the conference line, stunning Madison to silence. He introduced himself to my parents and confirmed that they had just admitted to knowingly spending the proceeds of a fraudulent transaction on a recorded line with the FBI. The color drained from my mother's face. Madison finally started to put the pieces together. I turned my phone camera slightly, just enough to show Agent Miller's badge and the FBI seal on the monitors of the mobile command unit. I'm not at a party anymore, Madison. I'm in federal custody because your fraudulent sale triggered a terrorism alert on a classified facility. On one of the surveillance monitors, I watched the parallel scene, the tactical team swarming my warehouse, the quick flip crew dropping their bolt cutters and raising their hands. Simultaneously, I heard sirens growing closer through Madison's microphone. The trap was springing shut at the exact same moment in 2 different states. The Arpin Sheriff's Department and FBI field agents, I informed her. They're coming